Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the last instalment of the damning report into state corruption under his predecessor is handed over to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. Over the last 4 years, the Zondo Commission's investigated how South Africa's coffers were looted of around 15 billion euros during Jacob Zuma's leadership. The African Union denounces negotiations with Sudan's military leaders aimed at getting transition back on track following the army's takeover last October. The political crisis has triggered an economic one. And the UK's Prince Charles pays tribute to victims of the genocide in Rwanda during the first trip by a British royal to the country. The Prince of Wales is there as the ceremonial head of the Commonwealth as the summit for the 54-member bloc gets underway in Kigali. But first, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has received the fifth and final chapter of an investigation into corruption under his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Headed by Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, it mentions abuses by Arthur Fraser, the former intelligence chief who's accused Ramaphosa of covering up the theft of $4 million from his farm in Limpopo province. Ramaphosa's fiercely denied this, and Fraser's one of the several top figures implicated in the pillaging of state-owned enterprises that's been dubbed state capture. Nadine Theron tells us more.
As he handed over the final state capture report to President Cyril Ramaphosa, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo was emotional when he said his commission couldn't investigate all the allegations that were brought to them, as it would have taken more than a decade. Over the past 4.5 years, witnesses provided evidence into money laundering, corruption and frauds in front of Zondo's Commission of Inquiry. He compiled his findings in 5 reports with damning findings against politicians, business people and former President Jacob Zuma. Zuma's alleged corrupt relationship with the Gupta family resulted in the looting of almost every South African state-owned entity. The latest report deals with how the state security agency allegedly went after Zuma's enemies. Gupta brothers Rajesh and Ajay were arrested in Dubai earlier this month, and South African authorities are working hard on their extradition. They fled the country when Zuma was removed as president in 2018. Ramaphosa said that he would only deal with the Commission's findings once he's received the final reports. He will be presenting the report to Parliament in 4 months' time and will include his response to the findings and recommendations.
The coffin containing the tooth that is all that remains of assassinated former Congolese President Patrice Lumumba returned to DR Congo from Brussels on Wednesday before being taken to Onalua, the village where he was born. Belgium returned the remains to the icon's family this week. Lumumba was killed by separatists in 1961 in violence that was sanctioned by the former colonial power. 2 days of tributes are planned in Onalua before the remains will be laid to rest in a mausoleum in Kinshasa at the end of the month. Now, the African Union's denounced negotiations with Sudan's military leaders aimed at getting transition back on track following the army's takeover last October. The country's main civilian blocs have boycotted the talks. UN and regional bloc IGAD also helped set them up, but the AU slammed them as being dishonest and opaque in sidelining key participants. The political crisis has led to Sudan's membership of the EU, of the African Union, and some foreign aid being suspended. The country is facing an economic crisis, as Shirley Sitbin tells us.
It's summer. Temperatures have soared, but water pipes are empty. People have to walk to the nearest river or collect rainwater if they want to drink or wash anything.
The lack of water is a big problem for us. In terms of health, we can't clean properly, can't wash our clothes or clean bathrooms, so health problems do happen.
Most people can't buy water because it's too expensive for them. The pipes have gone dry due to repeated power cuts. Without power, water pumps can't function.
The constant power cuts really affect us. It is very stressful because you use electricity for so many things.
Sudan has long had economic problems, but the situation has reached new lows since the military coup in October. Residents have protested repeatedly. International donors and institutions say they will only give the money they promised Sudan if the military resume talks with civilian leaders they ousted in October.
During 2022 and 23, we were expecting nearly $4 billion from the World Bank.
Authorities have even failed to buy wheat they had ordered from farmers, which means that wheat is now rotting in farms. This at a time Sudan is desperate for flour due to the Ukrainian war.
Well, the UK's Prince Charles paid tribute to victims of the genocide during the first trip by a British royal to Rwanda. The Prince of Wales is in the country as a ceremonial head of the Commonwealth as the summit for the 54-member bloc gets underway in Kigali. The group of mainly former British colonies has faced criticism for doing little in the interest of its poorer members, and the role of the monarchy itself is growing increasingly controversial. Jane Flanagan joins us now with more from Rwanda. Jane, so first of all, give us a sense of what this summit is all about. Is it just a get-together or is there a specific aim?
Well, the Commonwealth heads of government typically meet every other year, but it's been 4 years now since they've come together, and they're meeting here in Kigali. I think it's fair to say that in the absence of the Queen, and the world has changed so much since before the pandemic, that questions are naturally arising about the Commonwealth. What is its purpose? What is its future? What is its relevance to its members? It's here in Rwanda because despite originally being set up from the remnants of the British Empire, Rwanda is actually the most recent new addition to the family of nations. And so it is also the opportunity for Paul Kagame to show the world how Rwanda has changed since the '94 genocide that Prince Charles was hearing so much about today, and really being seen as the Singapore of Africa.
Now, with regards to those African countries that were part of the former British Empire, if we look in the Caribbean, we've seen more and more Caribbean members trying to move away from the monarchy. Why is the Commonwealth relevant to former British colonies in Africa today?
Well, there are plenty of member states in the Commonwealth who don't have the Queen, as you aren't in the realm. So I think what the message from Prince Charles is not an either or. You don't have to have the monarchy in order to stay in the Commonwealth. So for African states, I think when you've got China as the main trading partner of Africa, it's really, the Commonwealth does have to present its relevance to its states, including Africa, and 19 of the 54 states are from Africa. So I think the Commonwealth really has to set out its stall this week in terms of what it can offer on the key challenges facing the African continent and all its members around climate change, poverty, food insecurity, and so on, because there is a great feeling that it is the poorer countries of the world, many of them in the Commonwealth, that really aren't given a platform. They aren't being represented on the world stage, and the Commonwealth should really set out its stall that it is there to look after its members and be a voice for them.
Clearly, there's some kind of appeal because we're still seeing members, new countries trying to join, Gabon being one of the latest hopefuls. What do you think it sees in terms of being of benefit in joining the Commonwealth?
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, it seems to me that people are wanting to join, and Gabon, the former French colony there in West Africa, is said to be admitted this weekend. Togo, another former French colony, is knocking on the door. It does seem to reflect a chilling of relations between Francophone Africa and Paris, and that the Commonwealth does seem to be another place, provide a home for them. I don't know, to be honest, what the attraction is, but I do think the fact that a major power like Canada and a tiny country from the Pacific or from African has the same level of influence in this organisation does have huge appeal.
Thanks very much, Jane Flanagan there speaking to us from Kigali. While staying with Gabon, it's bracing to contain an outbreak of bird flu that's already killed tens of thousands of birds. The race is on to clamp down on the spread of the disease as the key poultry sector is already struggling to recover from the shock of the pandemic. Our correspondent sent us this report.
There are about 4,000 laying hens at this poultry farm outside of Libreville. Staff keep a close 24-hour watch on the birds. In the midst of a deadly outbreak, they are constantly looking for signs of infection. Farmers are still struggling to recover from the impact of the pandemic and the rocketing price of feed. This deadly flu is the latest threat to the industry.
The epidemic needs to be eradicated. And not only that, but the price of food has tripled in the last 2 months. We're not living, we're surviving. We're digging into our stocks. We haven't felt it yet, but in 2 months' time, we'll see the results. Many will shut down, definitely.
Poultry sales at this market have fallen since authorities raised the alarm about the outbreak. The drop in demand has hit sellers so hard.
Before the crisis, our daily income was estimated at 40,000 CFA francs. But after the measure, income has dropped, so it's estimated at about 10,000 a day, sometimes even 5,000. It's a complicated situation.
Local authorities are trying to contain any identified outbreaks as soon as possible. They've brought in a ban on moving poultry in and out of the capital. A committee at the Ministry of Livestock is reacting to the crisis in real time. They've tightened up monitoring of the poultry breeding sector.
When poultry is sold at the market, these farmers should present a veterinary health certificate. The livestock authorities ensure that the farm is free of avian flu.
The outbreak has killed 17,000 chickens on 4 farms, located about 50 kilometers from Libreville. Gabon has banned the import of all poultry until further notice.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
Fake news. Noun. False stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media. At France 24, our job is to provide you with information that's been verified. We check sources, we check facts, we sort what is true from what is fake.
At the France 24 Observers, we verify photos and videos circulating online. If they're fake, we let you know and tell you how we spotted them.
In Fact or Fake, we dig into viral stories around Europe to shake out the truth from the trash.
Every day, the Info Migrants team scours social networks to fight fake news about the reality of migration.
France 24, news based on facts.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.